Welcome back to part 2 of our series on the System.Reflection namespace. So this is our series necessary to start kind of going into the Excel object model for Python. So recreating the Excel object model in pure Python code. Now, last video, what did we do? Well, we introduced the System.Reflection namespace, and really this was the namespace that was giving us information about the types that lived inside of our assembly. And we can think of the types as just being a category of different types of objects. So things like classes, interfaces, enumeration, structures. Those are kind of the big ones that we need at this point. And what we can do with these types is using the System.Reflection namespace, we can extract all their members. And those members can be things like methods, properties, events, things along that nature. And with those members, they all have properties and methods that return different pieces of information about it. Things like their name, things about their parameters they might offer, or things like that. So basically all the information we need to recreate the code that we might see in VBA, for example, we need to be able to rewrite it in Python. So this is going to help us do that. It's going to help us get the underlying information we need in order to effectively do that. So what we've done so far is we've collected all the different types inside of our interop library, and we got a nice little summary that told us how much there were. So there was like, I think something like 400 interfaces or something like that. So just a bunch of different information. What we're going to do next is we're going to start looping through each one of those categories and just learning a little bit more about it. And so some of this, for the most part, I'm just going to kind of walk through it. Again, nothing super fancy at this point. It's just more calling the methods and properties, just understanding kind of what they mean. So for example, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through all of our classes. I want to know its name. That's really important. I want to know its name. I want to know if it's visible. Is it a visible class, or is it a private one, or things like that? Is it sealed? Is it a COM object? That's always good to know. Is it a COM object? Because we've seen with Win32 comms, that gives us a little bit of a piece of information about it. Abstract class, the class, which module it belongs to, which namespace, the full name, the underlying system type, and then getting information like the number of members it has, number of methods, properties, events, interfaces, fields, constructors, nested types. These are all the possible members that it could have. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of categorizing it to do that. But I think it's also important to understand that these are really, really similar. Get members, get methods, get properties, get events. I mean, it's pretty much identical. You're just changing out the name of the member that you want. This one returns everybody. So get members will return everybody. Methods, properties, events, interfaces, so on. If you call get methods, it's only going to return the method members. So only the methods. Likewise, if you call get properties, it's only going to return the property members. So it's very important to understand that some of these return very specific category of members, while this one right here is just going to return everything. It's going to return all the members that belong. So if you want everybody, line 87 is the one for you. So additionally, there's some information that, again, you might want to know about it. So is abstract, what is this? Well, is it the type, is it abstract and things like that? What is it? An abstract class is marked as abstract and must inherit in Visual Basic. Derived class as interesting. Problem is I don't use C# enough to really, I guess, understand all the benefits of this. But I think it's important to understand how to get the information that you need from it, and then from there, helping determine what you need to do. So things like, what's some other ones? Is private. Well, it is public. So there is public and is private. So if it was declared public and is not a nested type. So some of these I would definitely say you might want to read before you just start assuming what it is. Get a value indicating whether the type can be accessed outside by code outside the assembly. So might be really important for us because if it's not visible, we might not be able to access it and things like that. So again, really it's just a type. You're going to get some information on that type, and then you're going to kind of summarize the information about it. So really cool information. I was actually spent a lot of time on this just because there's just so much to it. There's just so much to it, and it's really interesting to see kind of what exists in everything and how this entire interop library was structured. But you can see, so we have events. Events are really important. You'll see a lot of the events, but I don't really care about those ones. I care about, they're all events, aren't they? Always events. God. So what I don't like about it is, how do I want to do that? I know what I can do. Now I know why I had that line of code. If it's a COM object, I don't think it can be an event. So this is a way where if I just wanted to see the ones, not the events, because you have to understand, like, there's like in some cases like 50 events. So what I do is I say, well, if it's a COM object, then only print those ones. And you'll notice right away, magically, it reduced that list pretty dramatically. But these are kind of the bigger ones, right? So these are the, the query table class, the application class, the chart class. So these are like kind of like I would call the bigger objects, the worksheet class. Really don't know what global class is, workbook class, and then again, just different types of information. Is it visible? Is it sealed? Is it a COM object? It better be a COM object. We set that property equal to true. And then it's an abstract class. What module it's in? So it's in the Excel DLL. The class is in namespace, Microsoft.Office.Interop Excel. The class has a full name of this. So this is all really important information when it comes to generating that source code, especially things like this, knowing in advance how many members it has and understanding how that's all distributed is crucial. It's really, really important. So I cannot kind of emphasize this. It's really important you get as much information as you need from the System.Reflection namespace because it contains so much information. Okay. So let's kind of repeat this process, but we're going to do it for the interfaces and the enumeration. So this is kind of the well, I don't know why I said fancier. It's not really fancier. It's just different, right? Again, most of these are going to be at least events, unfortunately, but I'm going to try to at least show you what it looks like. Now, this is also letting you know, like, goodness, look at all this stuff. I mean, just tons of information. Slicer pivot tables, slicer items. What we're going to do is we're going to take our interfaces, and this is really what I would say is generating those Python files that I showed you a few videos ago, where we have one for a model connection. We can now create an entire Python file that's dedicated just to this particular interface, or text connection, data feed connection. We can see all the methods and properties and things like that. Just tons of information ready and available for us. So that's the interfaces. Let's go down to the enumeration. So these are things like the constants. Ooh, I want to make sure I have that final line, or else it's just not going to look pretty. I spent way too much time organizing this. It was ridiculous. So with this one, I did something a little bit different. So this is all the same. This one I got the names, which returns an array. And I also got the values. So this is the value where if you want basically the integer version of it, this would be the value that you need to pass through. And then I also counted, I put them in a list so that way you can see them. So what you can see from this, oh my goodness, look at this. List object source type. You can see the full name. You can see the underlying system type. You can see the number of values, the number of names. So these are the names. So these are kind of like the strings that we're used to using. And then we also have the value that it can be with it. So pretty interesting stuff when you get a chance to see it. Now, I know sometimes it's a little bit deceiving. You might think like, oh, well, can it just be 1, 2, whatever? A little bit misleading because again, here it's giving that impression that it is. It's not. You can't just assume they're going to be in numerical order. Some of these are actually completely are not in numerical order. You can see all the RGB color codes and things like that. You can see just tons of information, and how you use it. My goodness, be my guess. But you can see there's just tons of information right there. Right there, ready for the taking. All right, so we went through classes, we went through interfaces. What's kind of the next step? Well, we're going to go back through our interfaces again. But for our interfaces, we're now going to get the members that belong to all of them. So this is where we're going to start getting things like the methods, the properties, things along that nature. So that way we can ensure that we have all the necessary information to get from it. So what I like to do is take it one step at a time. So we're going to first loop through each interface. So we'll just say interface in the interfaces list. Again, just for readability, because so much information does come back, I do kind of separate things into little hierarchies. Some people might call it me being just particular, but again, there's so much information coming back. I want to make sure you can clearly see what belongs to what. Otherwise, you will get lost. Trust me, I did. All right, so once we've done that, we need to grab all their members. So this is grabbing all the members for the interface. And technically, you could do this with classes too, but at this point, it's just important to know that there is a method for these type that is called get members. So get members will get all the members that belong to that interface. And so this is obviously going to return a list or an array if you want to be more specific. And from there, we need to loop through it. So loop through all the members. So how do we do that? Well, we just do for interface member in interface members. Now we have to start determining what type of member is it. Well, let's try to first see if it's maybe a method. Okay, so let's see if it's a method. Some have a bunch. So do not be surprised if you're, I would say, sitting, waiting for this thing to finish, because I will tell you right now, it will have a bunch in some cases. Sorry, I'm like trying to type and talk at the same time. Okay, so System.Reflection, and the System.Reflection namespace has a property, members, member types. So let me see, I don't know if it's exact. I think it's an enumeration if I remember correctly. Where's M? Member. Here we go. Yeah, it's an enumeration, my apologies. So we have the enumeration, and then we're gonna basically determine which one these are. So you can either use the integer value personally for readability. I'm sure a lot of you are probably gonna be new to this. I think you should type it out. And so for a method, it's simply method. Okay, so we've determined it's a method. Now what? What do we do? Well, I would say let's get the name. So we can grab the name. And so we'll say method name, and that will equal, oh no, sorry. My apologies, I just jumped ahead. There is a special property called isSpecialName. isSpecialName is important because we want it to be false. Because if it's false, it means we have a method that can be called by the user. So if isSpecialName is set to true, it means that particular method cannot be called by the user. Well, I want to be able to call the methods that I can call. So as a user, I want to be able to have the ones that I can call. So what we do is say if interface member dot is special name, and we want this one to be false. So this one, you do want it to be false. Once you've determined that, and now that we know that it's not a special, kind of method or anything like that, let's just grab the name really quick. So what I'll do is I'll just print the method name, and I'm going to see how much time we have left. I might stop it here and then pick up in the next video. So this is where I say, like I said, you can be waiting. Depends how much you have to go. But you can see, for example, there's an interface called item. Which one is it? There is a method called default, get enumerator, text frame. Sorry, it's a little bit off, but trust me, when we get it all done, it'll be fine. Begin connect, begin disconnect, end connect. So just different information. What is this one? Phonetics. It's oddly specific. Delete, add, get enumerator. Pivot layout, add fields. There's a method called add fields. Calculated members, get enumerator, add to, add calculated member, delete for calculated member at least. Watches, delete, pivot cell, allocate change, discard change, graphic, auto recover. So tons of information here, kind of ready to, I would say, define all the methods for a particular type. So really cool information, and we'll see how much we have. Oh, I got some time left. You guys can do up to 22 minutes, hopefully. Try to keep it around that time. Okay, so there's the method name. What I'm going to do, just again to kind of show you as much as possible, I'm going to show you some other stuff. Just copy over what I had. So we have the name. We can determine the return type. So what is the return type of this method? What does it return when we call it? And what are the parameters of this particular method? Now, at this point, this isn't going to be that useful, but we're going to see how we're going to leverage that next. So let me clear this all out. And what I'm going to do, just again, I just don't want us sitting here waiting for some of this stuff to print. I'm just going to comment it out because I just need to kind of print stuff as we're doing it. Hopefully, you understand what that's printing now. But you can see there's a lot of stuff. Some don't have any methods, some do. A lot of them will be related to events, unfortunately. Let me see if this one's down here. Chart interface, so this is kind of useful. Well, that didn't actually have anything, but doc events. So add selection change, you can see the type enumeration, so what type of member it is, and then the name, and then what it returns. Sometimes it returns nothing. It doesn't have to necessarily return anything, but some will return particular items. I think up here, does this return anything? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. That's okay. But yeah, so I mean, this gives us kind of that information we need in order to start getting that code all auto-generated. So next part is parameters. So I'm going to copy this and we will paste it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to indent this in. So up here, you saw that I used the get parameters method to return, if any, parameters from that method. It doesn't mean anything's actually going to be there. So it's very important we add that extra condition that says, hey, if nothing's there, don't go to this part of the code, because otherwise it's just going to return some errors. Also, it's just a waste of time. Like, why try to loop through something that doesn't exist, right? So very important we add this because not everyone's going to have any parameters. Some have no parameters. But once we do that, the get parameters method, let's see what it gives us back. Where is it? Member info. So in essence, where is it? Is that the one? This one, perfect, method info. So if it's a method, where is it? That's not that one either. Well, there's parameter info, I know that one, but I have to remember which one it comes from. I think it's up here if I remember correctly. Member info, property info, event info, method base. Maybe it's that one. Get parameter, gotcha. Yeah, this is kind of one of the sometimes confusing part too is you would think it's method info and it's not. So very important to remember that the member info, so even though we're getting all of our members back and they're kind of like a member info object, they do technically represent different types. And so depending on the type they represent, they also represent a different class object inside the namespace. So technically, if it's a method, when we call get methods or is method, it's technically saying it's a System.Reflection.method base. And so here, once we know what it is, we can start calling that particular class object's method. And so, for example, we know there's a get parameters one because we just called it. That returns an array of parameter info objects. And so again, if I click this one, I'll see that there's more properties that belong to it. In fact, there's even different types of methods you can also get. So this is how I'm getting all this information about those particular ones. I'm basically determining what it is, and then based on that, I call the appropriate method and property. And so here, all I did is I returned that array of parameter info objects. I first made sure that there were some. If there were, I looped through each one of them. I grabbed the name. I grab the parameter type. I see if it's optional. I determine the position. And then I also determine if it has a default value. Now, if it does have a default value, I would like to know what that default value is. So I also grab the default value and print it out. Again, some of these, I think for the events, there's not really going to be any, but keep in mind it is there. And then this is all just, again, for readability, making sure you can see everything clearly. You can see there's obviously a ton of these. I've been sitting here sometimes going, yes, needs to end. It's running, it's running. But on a happier note, it kind of was warmer today. It's been cold in San Diego, not liking it. I mean, I'm okay with it, but it's whatever. All right, so we can see here. So for example, on this particular, let's see if I can find an interface so I can kind of give you an idea of the hierarchy. Again, I can't necessarily promise it just because there's, oh, perfect. So OLE objects events underscore event interface, it has a method called add got focus. And that method has, what is it? One parameter. Well, actually has no parameters, it's basically saying none. And it's basically returning all that. So this doesn't really help us. Oh, Lordy. Maybe there's one up above. Here we go. No, it's not it either. That's the problem with the events. There's so many of them. And the problem is they overwhelm. So you think it's something that it's not, but I promise you it is. Let me do this. If event, let me do this. In method name, no, I don't want it. So if not in method name, then do all of this. Because again, I want you to see something other than the events. They're all great and dandy, but there's other things in there too. I mean, hopefully you can kind of see right there, it is changing, like arguments. So it's there. It's kind of getting overwhelmed by just the events. And we're waiting again. Good. Looks like it finished up. Did that not work either? Oh, I know why. It's because I didn't put it in the interface name. Ooh, fun. I'll do it one last time. Again, I really want you to make sure you see it, because otherwise you'll think it's not there, and it really is. Perfect. Okay, and then I need to put all this indented. I mean, the events are great, don't get me wrong, but again, there's other things other than events. And then what are we doing next? What are we doing after this? I think after that, we're going to have enough. Oh, geez, I went over too. No. But yeah, I mean, hopefully you can see right there. It's kind of fast, I know, but it is changing, and there are different names than none, I promise. Good. So now it finally returns some values, but you can see that it does have parameter names. It does tell you the type it expects and things like that. So that's really important, because if we don't know this, it's really hard to kind of make it where it's early binding, because we don't know the type. So that's kind of another reason why I really wanted to show you this, was it's super important, because this is telling us what the type it's expecting. So for example, this one right here, right? So the open method, it has a parameter called file name, and it is supposed to be a string. So we have to make sure that we're handling these methods correctly, and that's how I'm getting that information. But I've taken enough of your time. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments below. And then in the next one, we're going to keep finishing up what we did. So we're going to go on properties next, and then events. And then I think that should be it. Maybe another video after that, but we'll see. So thank you again for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next video.